Welcome to Wales Today. I'm Thomas Dafydd. Our top stories. A court's heard the man who arranged footballer Emiliano Sala's flight enlisted a pilot who was neither qualified nor competent. Budweiser says it will invest £100 million to power its brewery near Newport with green energy. Just one big announcement today on tackling climate change. The baby girl who died at 13 weeks old because of a rare genetic disorder. Her mother has decided to share her experience to help other parents.
We took her to the beach. She felt the sun on her skin, and I remember we took her out and showed her the moon one night. You know, there was a lovely big moon. We made some really special memories with her.
Also tonight, they're in favour of it, but could a new body looking at the Senate's powers go as far as recommending independence? And the teenager who took up painting during lockdown is being offered thousands of pounds for her work. Hello, good evening. A jury has been told that a man acted recklessly and dangerously when he organised a flight carrying Emiliano Sala. The footballer and the pilot David Ibbotson were flying from Nantes to Cardiff in January 2019 when the plane crashed into the English Channel. Cardiff Crown Court heard that David Henderson enlisted a pilot who was neither qualified nor competent. He denies endangering the safety of an aircraft. Nellie Bird reports.
The sea of flowers and tributes to the man who never got to play for the Bluebirds, Emiliano Sala. Today, key details were revealed about the organisation of the flight which should have brought him to Cardiff. It was organised by this man, David Henderson, shown leaving court this afternoon. Opening the case for the prosecution, Martin Gowsy QC said that David Henderson acted dangerously and recklessly when he arranged the flight. He said he knew that David Ibbotson didn't have the right licence or training to fly at night, and that 6 months before the flight he carried out 2 infringements picked up by the regulator. This is David Henderson in the exact same plane that Emiliano Sala was travelling in that evening. He didn't own it, but had hired it many times. The court heard that following those breaches picked up by the Civil Aviation Authority, the owner of the plane said she didn't want David Ibbotson to fly it again. But within a month, Mr. Ibbotson was back in the pilot's seat of the Piper Malibu. The court heard that David Henderson was in Paris as he arranged the flight. The prosecution say messages reveal he was aware of David Ibbotson's lack of competency in flying in bad weather. On the morning of the 19th of January, 2 days before the flight, David Henderson wrote that he was concerned about the weather, asking Ibbotson, "Can you shoot ILS? Can you blag IFR?" referring to the instruments in the plane to help fly if you can't see properly. David Ibbotson replies, "Yes, done it before." The jury were also read messages that were sent by David Henderson when he knew that the plane had gone down. He tells one person, "Bad news, Ibbo has crashed the Malibu." Questions may be asked about his flying. In another, he says, "Need to be very careful," opens up a whole can of worms. Keep very quiet. Emiliano Sala's body was found a month after the crash, after a lengthy air and sea search. The pilot, David Ibbotson's body, has never been found. David Henderson denies a charge of endangering the safety of the aircraft carrying the 2 men. The trial is expected to last for 10 days.
From converting one of the UK's biggest breweries in Monmouthshire to run on hydrogen fuel to changing the way we get rid of waste carbon dioxide from factories in Flintshire. With a major climate change summit in just a fortnight, there have been a series of announcements on plans to meet climate change targets. Our environment correspondent Stefan Messenger has the details.
It's been a day to get drunk on announcements about fighting climate change. Let's start in Mega, where Budweiser will plough £100 million into its brewery so it can run off clean hydrogen instead of fossil fuels.
We believe when it's built, it will be the largest green hydrogen project in Wales as of current announcements today. And we think it's a really exciting opportunity to show how using sun, wind and water, we can help to decarbonise one of our most popular and desirable household products and make it more sustainable.
Big international firms were lining up to announce plans to go green at this summit in London earlier, ahead of the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow next month. The Turkish owners of this paper mill in Shotton confirming they'll spend £500 million on making the site more sustainable, creating 300 new jobs.
This is really revolutionary for our business.
In a further boost for Flintshire, the UK government's chosen to fast-track a project trying to slash carbon emissions from industries there and across northwest England.
Clean hydrogen will be distributed via new pipelines.
This will be one of the first big hubs for green jobs in the UK, with the aim of creating hydrogen fuel and pumping it to firms, while capturing their waste carbon dioxide to be buried under the sea. The scheme has its critics, but ministers have given it their full backing. There'll be a decision too on building another large nuclear plant before the next election, according to the UK government's new net zero strategy, with Wilfa on Anglesey named as one of the sites under consideration.
It takes us much closer to the ultimate goal of being able to develop this site, 120 million quid, future nuclear fund. This enables developers to actually really make a solid case in the context of net zero. So we think this really puts Wilfa right back on the map as a potential site.
And grants of £5,000 will be on offer from April to homeowners in Wales and England to trade in their old gas boilers for greener heat pumps. On the steps of the Senedd today, a reminder via this melting ice sculpture that time is running out to stop the rise in global temperatures. And the Welsh Government giving some of today's announcements from Westminster a frosty reception.
This is not a time for gimmicks. This is a time for serious action. The science is urgent, and we've had 18 months of being told to follow the science on COVID, or we now need to follow the science on climate, and that requires big, bold actions. And what we've heard from the government in England is a small announcement made to look big.
The Welsh Government set to announce its own net zero strategy next week. These campaigners have collected 10,000 messages from the public, urging them to be bold.
We want them to understand the real stories behind what's going on in Wales and the people on the ground that actually have the solution to some of the climate problems that are happening today. So we want their voices to be heard.
The next stop for these campaigners, and the politicians too, is Glasgow and that major climate change summit in just 2 weeks' time.
Stefan Messenger. And later in the programme, we'll be on Anglesey looking at the green energy projects making an impact in North Wales. Other news now. There were 81 deaths registered involving COVID in Wales in the latest weekly figures from the Office for National Statistics. This is 17 more than the previous week. Meanwhile, the latest daily figures from Public Health Wales show there were 2 deaths of people with coronavirus. There are 3,200 new cases. An inquest has heard how a caravan fire, which killed a 3-year-old boy and seriously injured his 4-year-old brother, was probably caused by an electric fan heater. Zach Michael Harvey died of smoke inhalation in the blaze in Firehorse in Ceredigion in January last year. His father and brother both escaped. A coroner ruled Zach died as a result of misadventure. A man arrested on suspicion of sending a death threat to the Labour MP Chris Bryant has been released on bail. The 76-year-old from Pontycymer in Bridgend was questioned by police after it was reported by the politician. Mr Bryant called police after receiving the death threat via email. It comes in the wake of the death of Sir David Amos, the MP stabbed to death in Essex. A North Wales domestic abuse charity says it's worried about the future of its services after its extra COVID funding ends next year. The Domestic Abuse Safety Unit received £300,000 from the Welsh Government during the pandemic, but fears it could lose vital services without long-term funding. The Welsh Government said the sector had been a crucial lifeline, and it was in the process of setting out spending plans for the next few years. Ellen Wynne reports.
You can get out. You don't have to live with the threat of abuse.
Catrin Lois from Denbighshire left their husband after he attacked Catrin and their 18-year-old son back in 2016.
He shoved me back until I hit the washing machine, and the corner was the worktop, and it hit my back. I screamed. Our son came running downstairs. There was a table between us. He grabbed our son round the neck, and I can remember seeing his thumbs being pushed into and his Adam's apple going, and to hear your child coughing, trying to breathe, I can see it now as if it's just happened.
Catrin called the police and will forever be grateful for their help and the support given by the North Wales Women's Centre, which is now run by the charity Dazw. They received extra financial help during COVID, but staff are now worried about the future of their services.
We're telling people that we are open and this is what our capacity is now, but what happens actually after that funding ends, because we haven't had any commitment that that funding is going to continue, but obviously the referrals are still going up, and as I mentioned before, I still think we haven't really seen the true impact of COVID on domestic abuse victims.
Catherine's now ex-husband was convicted of 2 assaults. He was given a fine and a 1-year restraining order. They are no longer in contact. Shortly after the separation, Catherine had breast cancer.
Well, I've had a bilateral mastectomy because I had cancer in both breasts. That was a walk in the park. Walk in the park compared to domestic abuse.
You've decided to share your story and tell us about your experience. Why now? What's made you decide to share?
Because nobody talks about it. It's a dirty little secret. People don't want to hear about it. But the more of us who speak about it, the more of us who are survivors that speak about it, the more chance and hope there is for others to be able to leave the situations that they find themselves in. You can get out. You can survive this. You can become you. You can tell your story and help another person.
Catherine Loyce speaking to Ellen Wynne. And if you've been affected by any issues raised in that report, you can visit the BBC Action Line website to get help from a number of organisations. You're watching Wales Today. Stay with us. Plenty still ahead. We'll hear from a teenager who took up painting during lockdown and is now being offered thousands of pounds for her work.
And it's been a wet and windy but mild day. A change on the way. Coming up in the programme, I'll let you know when you'll need those extra layers.
The First Minister has confirmed that independence will be one of the options being considered by a new commission set up to examine Wales's future relationship with the rest of the UK. But Mark Drakeford told members of the Senedd it would not be his preference. Here's our political editor, Felicity Evans.
Marches like this one have suggested a rise in support for Welsh independence in recent years. But the results of May's Senedd elections showed the majority of voters were still backing unionist parties. But being pro-union is not always the same as being happy with the way the UK is working right now. And that's why the Welsh Government has set up a new commission to look at changes.
The terms of reference for the Commission certainly allow for independence to be considered as one of these options. But nothing else is ruled out either. If I have the opportunity, I will certainly give my evidence to the Commission that entrenched devolution in a successful United Kingdom is the best constitutional for Wales.
The Commission's co-chairs say they want to consider all the options on the menu.
I've always believed that an effective constitution is one that delivers for the people. So it's not about creating some kind of perfect prototype that works for people who work in politics and in the administration of politics. It's about how politics delivers for communities and people across the nation.
I think we're going to be looking at all the possible options, and I think we're going to be considering what independence means, what self-determination means, because that's part of what it is to think about how we understand democracy.
So how much appetite is there for change amongst these shoppers in Bangor?
Wales being in more control of their own country.
Independence?
Yes.
I don't think we're strong enough. I don't think we have enough resources to be able to run ourselves at the moment anyway. Things might change, you never know, but I'm not going to be very popular with my friends around what I've just said now, but...
All the main political parties say they'll take part in the commission, though their contributions will be very different.
We welcome the news of the announcement of the Commission and that independence will play a part in its work, and that will have the resources of government behind it so that it can be considered in a reasoned and thoughtful way.
What we need is a Welsh Government that's going to be focusing on using the existing powers that it's got to get to grips with the big challenges that are already facing Wales. We've got huge backlogs in our NHS as a result of COVID.
The Commission co-chairs say they want to hear from all parts of Welsh society before deciding which plan to recommend in their final report, due in 2023. But the view at the other end of the M4 could make or break those recommendations. And so far, the current UK government shows no sign of getting on board for constitutional change.
Well, Fliss is with us now. So how significant is this commission?
Well, I think there's a few points to make. I think it's significant that all the main parties are taking part, including the Welsh Conservatives, who are opposed to the further devolution of powers. Although listening to the comments from the co-chairs of the Commission, it seems that they don't regard the status quo as a particularly sustainable option, so we'll have to watch that space. Plaid Cymru regard this as a very significant milestone, as the first time that an official Welsh Government Commission will look at independence as a possible option for Wales' future. And I think the elephant in the room is what I referred to there at the end of my report, which is the fact that there can't be any major constitutional change unless the UK government buys into it. And so far, they have repeatedly resisted attempts to try to engage on any further devolution of powers. So what happens as a result of this commission may well depend actually on the outcome of the next general election.
OK, Felicity Evans, thank you very much. I'm so glad we got the chance to meet her. The words of Sharon Gorvet, who was told during pregnancy that her baby daughter had a rare genetic condition and would not survive. Despite being given no hope, baby Sophie lived for 13 weeks. Almost 20 years on, Sharon has decided to share her experience in a digital exhibition to help other parents grieving the loss of a child to a genetic disorder. She's been speaking to Nicola Smith.
Sophie, oh gosh, she was just so pretty. Dark hair, dark blue eyes.
How Sharon Gorvet remembers her baby girl. These are treasured photos because at 3 months old, Sophie died with a genetic disorder called trisomy 18, or Edwards syndrome. At their 20-week scan, the family were told their baby was incompatible with life.
I'd found out later that a slot had been booked for me to have a termination. And when I said, well, no, actually, I've never agreed to this and it's not what I want, the consultant just looked and said, well, you know, are you telling me this pregnancy is very precious to you? And I said, well, yes. She's still my daughter. It changes nothing for me.
Sophie was born in the summer of 2004.
Called to mother care on the way home because we didn't even have a bed for her. Because I didn't think that I would be bringing a live baby home, because that's what they told me.
17 years on, and for the first time, Sharon has chosen to talk about her loss in a digital exhibition with the mould-based organisation Same But Different.
Our family was complete when she was there.
Credwen Hughes created a series of short films after speaking to Sharon and 9 other mothers who have lost a child to trisomy 13 or 18.
They all had commonalities, the way that they were given a diagnosis, the way that their child was talked about, and the grief that they felt was all similar, because it was almost like the subject that was whispered rather than talked about aloud. So it was really important to them that they shared their experiences.
And Sharon told me she's grateful she fought for the chance to spend time with Sophie.
We put buttercup under her chin, so she likes butter. You know, we took her to see the flowers. We took her to the beach. She felt the sun on her skin, and I remember we took her out and showed her the moon one night. You know, there was a lovely big moon. We made some really special memories with her. That is what has got us through, you know, the years since, you know. Even though it was hard after bonding with her, I'm just so glad we got the chance to meet her and make those memories.
Sharon Gorvet, who was speaking to Nicola Smith there. Well, as we've been hearing, it's been a day full of announcements about how the UK government intends to help meet renewable energy targets. But long before today's announcement, North Wales was hailed as a place full of potential for different types of green energy. Our reporter Brendan Williams is on Anglesey for us this evening. Brendan.
Good evening, Thomas, from M-Spark on the Menai Science Park on Anglesey. And this place works to link up developers in order to create a world-leading cluster of low-carbon energy companies, and it works with various different agencies in order to try and help Anglesey fulfil its goal of becoming an energy island. But there are plenty of other people too who think that the wider region can really help Wales in its quest to deliver on its renewable goals. Net zero emissions by 2050. That's the target, and it won't be easy. But North Wales can play a big role, according to the director of the country's largest renewable energy operator, provided we move fast.
The renewables industry is very fast moving. It's also very competitive, and it's not only competitive in an international context, but it's a competitive arena in the UK context. So, if we don't move ahead with things quickly, then we can expect them to move ahead elsewhere.
Much of North Wales's green potential is down to its vast coastline. It's already home to Gwynter Moor, the world's second largest offshore wind farm when it opened 6 years ago, and there are plans to extend it. On Anglesey, it's hoped a decision will be made soon on a 35 square kilometre tidal stream energy site.
Well, I think it's recognised that in meeting the needs and the demands of climate change, we have to present and prepare for a mix of energy generation sources. One of the most important of those is tidal stream energy, if only because it's a very predictable form of renewable energy.
Earlier this year, the UK government pledged nearly £5 million for a green hydrogen plant at Holyhead Port. Some think the island could be a leader in the field.
There's no getting away. Climate change is an issue. We've all experienced this, and it isn't an issue that happens on the other side of the world. So we have to be tackling climate change. But with hydrogen, there's an opportunity here to be tackling climate change, but also improving the economic conditions here in Anglesey.
Solar panels may not be new, but this firm in Denbighshire is seeing an explosion in interest from homeowners following huge rises in energy costs.
Typically this time of year we'd be getting 1 or 2 inquiries a week. The last 7 days we've seen 25 to 30 inquiries, which will obviously convert to business down the line. We believe that's down to a lot of the energy companies going out of business and people are concerned about the rising energy costs. The central government have got policy wrong, and I think people should be encouraged to look at more towards solar energy. We've gone down the path of electric cars, and which are all great, but we need the power. And where's the power coming from? And solar energy can provide that power, and it's a quick, efficient way of providing that power to homes and businesses.
UK ministers say Wales could be a driving force behind Britain's low-carbon economy, and they're working with the Welsh Government to help it play a pivotal role. So just a few examples there, but the truth is, Thomas, there are issues with all of them. Many people think that wind farms are ugly, for instance, solar parks too, and turbines under the sea. Well, there are big concerns over the impact on wildlife. So there are no easy answers, no quick fix, but a discussion is needed fast, Thomas.
OK, Brendan, thank you very much. One bit of sport news for you now, and within the last few minutes, Cardiff City's first-team coach, James Rowbury, has been confirmed as Newport County's new manager. Well, the 36-year-old will take charge. It's his first job as a manager. It comes after the departure of Mike Flynn earlier this month. A teenager from Swansea who took up painting during lockdown has been offered thousands of pounds for her work. Mackenzie Beard says it's a huge jump going from working in her garden shed to having her art displayed at a professional gallery. She's now being contacted by art dealers from across the world. Here's Ben Price.
When Mackenzie Beard picked up a paintbrush during lockdown and started painting portraits of family, friends and strangers, little did she realise how her talent would project her into the serious world of art. Now some of her pieces are on display at a gallery in Cardiff, with art dealers from Dubai to California offering up to £10,000 for her work. Mackenzie's latest portrait is of her grandfather, Bernard.
To go from having your work in your own shed and on social media where it's blown up, but then to have people that are experts in the art world to recognise your work and actually want it in their space to show it off, that's really nice, and that's something that I've not been part of before. You know, I haven't been to many galleries or anything, so I've gone from not going to many galleries to having my own work displayed in a gallery, which is quite a big jump.
At the start of the pandemic, with little else to do, 14-year-old Mackenzie took up painting in the garden shed, using paints and brushes that were lying around. she entered a competition with her portrait of John Tucker, a local Gower farmer. It won her a spot at the Royal Academy of Arts in London over the summer. Her talent was noticed by many. The portrait went viral on social media, shared thousands of times.
I think anyone can be a good portrait artist. I think it takes a lot for somebody to show real personality and the soul of a person through the pieces, and I think for someone so young, Mackenzie does this brilliantly.
Despite her busy life balancing schoolwork, music and sport, Mackenzie is still managing to find time for art and presenting it to others. Unsure exactly what the future may hold, Mackenzie says painting will definitely be a part of it now.
Great work there from Mackenzie. Well, it's been grey, wet and miserable for most of us today. Sabrina's here with hopefully some positive news.
Well, Thomas, Friday looks fairly settled and I do have a few bright spells in the forecast, but in general we do have more wet and windy weather in the forecast. Some gale force winds for some exposed spots too, together with a thunderstorm warning tomorrow. So through today we've had a tropical maritime air mass trace back the air, and it actually comes somewhere from Bermuda to the Azores, hence why in Flintshire today we got up to 20 degrees Celsius. But the mild air not sticking around for too long. On Thursday and Friday, an Arctic maritime air mass moving in, and that does mean some chillier conditions. I think you'll want those extra layers. So through the rest of this evening, some patchy rain and drizzle lingering, mainly over parts of mid and south Wales. And then overnight, that's when we're going to see a change to a scattering of blustery showers. Some of these on the sharp side, the potential for some rumbles of thunder too, and it will remain quite gusty in some places. Overnight lows dipping away to around 11 to 14 Celsius. Now from 4 a.m. until midday tomorrow, then we do have a thunderstorm warning in force. So if you do catch some heavy thundery showers and gusty winds, there could be a few issues, including some localised flooding and disruption. So across the Wales tomorrow, then we're expecting showers and longer spells of rain tracking northeastwards. Some of these on the heavy thundery side, quite gusty too, with the potential for some near gale force winds, and still a mild day despite the showers, with highs reaching around 12 to 16 Celsius. Now looking beyond that point, on Thursday we change air mass, so a colder northwesterly northerly airflow. We'll actually see a scattering of blustery showers, and some of these could be a little bit wintry over the highest mountain tops. It's going to feel chilly too. These are the maximum temperatures, but when you factor in the strength of the winds, which will be gale force in some places, then it's going to feel pretty chilly wherever you are across the country. But Friday, a more settled day, still on the chilly side though, and that's your latest forecast. Thomas.
Sabrina, thank you very much. And that is it. For now, we're back after the BBC News at 10. That's Wales Today from all of us here. Have a good evening.